Hello, everyone, and welcome to TBO. On today's episode, we're talking about Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard because Google Stadia is shutting down. And hey, look, it's a death of a video game company. So, thought I'd just because I've wanted to talk about this for ages because I think this is.
I am aware. Honestly, every episode of TFB where we talk about this, you bring it up, and then we have another 20-minute conversation on it. So
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. Not because I'm a PlayStation fanboy, but like honestly, it just isn't. I don't think very good idea to let one company own something that big, essentially. So we're just gonna go through a bunch of statistics. So if you love statistics, this video will be great.
yes, fascinating.
Mainly because I wanted to point out some things that I think a lot of people don't realize. Because I see a lot of people shitting on PlayStation saying, oh, they're doing a lot of what Microsoft is doing. But to the extent that Microsoft are doing it is a lot bigger than what people think Sony's doing. And people are like, yeah, no, it's fine because Sony does it. But no, it's Microsoft's doing it to a bigger extent. And I think I've kind of figured out what Microsoft's plan is.
Sure. Shall we actually explain what's happening first before we go into details? So on January 18th, 2022, Microsoft announced that it has the intent to acquire Activision Blizzard, and the initial price for this is $68.7 billion US.
Statistically dropped because Microsoft got it at a point when Activision Blizzard was dramatically lower because of a bunch of scandals caused by a lot of mishandling of current staff, a lot of just legal lawsuits, and their current president, who still is the president, being involved in a lot of scandals, and a lot of Activision staff being involved in a lot of scandals. So Microsoft managed to swoop in and go, look, we'll buy it and fix it all up and make it nice and shiny again and maintain the prestigiousness of Activision's brand.
Yes. So this is a full acquisition. It's not just acquiring part of it, or being a partnership. They are taking every single one of their properties. That includes Activision, Blizzard, and King, which is their mobile side of things.
Which I want to get to, but we'll keep going with this.
Yes, and under the current agreement, this should come to a close mid-2023. However, this has to be met with the regulatory and shareholder approval.
Similar to the Fox Studios being bought by Disney merger. Like, it has to be approved to understand whether or not it would become a monopoly and damage the competitive nature of the market by giving one company a lot of control over one section of the market, which Sony is trying to state that Microsoft buying Activision would cause, just because of purely how much market domination Activision alone holds on the gaming landscape. And we will get to that. So, essentially, I wanted to just go through some sales statistics for Call of Duty alone, because a lot of people like to point out how Sony holds stuff to exclusivity, and how that is justification for Microsoft to come in and buy Activision and then hold it exclusive, which Microsoft has stated that they won't do. And because it makes no... Microsoft has stated that it doesn't make financial sense for them to not have Call of Duty on other platforms, which I agree with. It doesn't make no sense, but that's not why they're saying that is their reasoning. My reasoning, I think they're doing that, is because if we go back to the Epic versus Apple lawsuit, which happened a couple years ago and is still ongoing because they're both trying to fight, which was Apple and Epic were fighting over the Apple's 30% take of any in-app purchases on the store, and Epic circumvented that by putting a browser extension so that it took them off-site, so that people would give, and intentionally poked the bear by offering a lower discount on V-Bucks for the if you bought them through the browser rather than on like a 30% saving. And then Apple and Epic went to court, and they basically went, yes, Epic did break the agreement, but it sort of caused this conversation to switch. Does Apple need to take 30%, or should that number be lower? Because Epic offers a somewhat like 89, 85%? I can't remember the statistical number, but it is statistically higher than like split for the developer than it is for Epic to take. And so in that lawsuit, it came out that one, Microsoft was on the side of Epic, which confused a lot of people. Why would Microsoft be against like on-store purchases being higher because Microsoft owns a store? They would take more money. However, my theory is, how do you keep the money but pretend that you're doing it for the consumer? Buy the company that owns the games, and you would get all the money from that anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
So buying Activision Blizzard would mean if the law changes so that hosting sites like the PlayStation Store, the Epic Store, the Steam Store had to give a higher revenue split to the developers, which could come. This is all theoretical. This is just my little. Why is Microsoft doing this sort of thing? And why are they coming out and saying we're gonna keep it on the consoles because it doesn't make financial sense to take it off? And I think that's because if they can get the law changed so that they take 90%, 85%, when it's sold on a PlayStation, Activision would take that percentage. It lowers the percentage that Sony would take, and it would give more to the developer, which is now owned by Xbox. Do you understand? Do you get that point?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So, and then the reasoning, like, people were going on about exclusivity is Sony does a lot of tactics for, like, Call of Duty where they go, here's some exclusive content, here's all of this. Microsoft would do the exact same thing, but they'd get a higher split. They'd get 100% of the profits if they did it. If they offered it on Game Pass, it would offer a huge incentive for people to switch to Game Pass because you'd get the game for however much a monthly subscription of Game Pass is.
Yes, I think in Game Pass they also have additional discounts. So
yeah,
even if they don't make the game free, they'll probably make the old ones free, but the newer ones may be like 50% off or something.
And how do you...
because they're a massive incentive because you would want to do it.
And a lot of people go, well, Sony has exclusives. They have developers and stuff like that. However, I was looking up the statistics for the highest first-party PlayStation games and the units sold. So, God of War is 19.5 million. This is according to Wikipedia. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is 16 million. Marvel's Spider-Man is 13.2 million. The Witcher 3, which isn't a first-party exclusive, this is a game sold on PlayStation, is 10.8 million, so that one doesn't count. The Last of Us Part 2 is 10 million units, and Horizon Zero Dawn is 10 million, and The Last of Us Remastered is 10 million. That is only 5 games that have sold over 10 million copies, right? And one nearly crossing that 20 million mark. And then I was looking at the Call of Duty statistics.
Yeah, so, how many? How many are above 10 million?
Right, so Call of Duty World at War in 2008, 17.66 million. Call of Duty World War II 2017 is 19 million. Modern Warfare. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare 2007 is 19.84. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare 2014 is 21.78 million. Call of Duty 2009 is 25.02. Black Ops 3 is 26. Call of Duty Ghost is 28.8. Black Ops 3 is 29.59. Modern Warfare 3 is 30.97, and Call of Duty Black Ops 2010 is 30.99 million. And this is all just rough statistics based on like sales numbers. And so, hey, look, every single COD except Part 2, I think, has sold over 10 million copies.
Is it on PlayStation though? It's sold over 10 million.
No, that's just abroad. That's just over the sales of Call of Duty. So all of those have sold over, which I'm just pointing out because yes, it's across multiple different consoles, but I'm just saying that's why Microsoft is saying, oh look, it doesn't make financial sense to take it off because that's how they get, because it's a third-party developer. They can spread it across multiple consoles, sell it on multiple things, whereas a PlayStation only sells 5 exclusives that are sold over 10 million. So
yeah.
Just from a money intake for how much a exclusive actually gets Sony, it gets them a bit, But a third-party game like that, which can go across multiple platforms, would sell a lot more. And you can also look against Activision, the other developer that Microsoft bought recently, which is Skyrim. Not Skyrim. Bethesda.
Oh, yeah, that happened. Yeah, that was recent as well.
Yeah, which was another big acquisition of about $7.9 billion. And just alone, Overwatch has sold 35 million copies, roughly. Diablo 3, roughly 30 million. Diablo 2, about 15 million. World of Warcraft, 12 million. Subscriber peak. So that doesn't mean, that's just how many people it's had at its peak, basically. StarCraft is 11 million. StarCraft 2, 6 million. Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, 3 million. Diablo 2.5 million. And that's just like those games. The Fallout series is between 5 and 10 million. Skyrim is between 5 and 10 million. Elder Scrolls Online is between 5 and 10 million. All of these games are between 2 and 5, 10, several, a lot of things, because they're across multiple different platforms. So Microsoft has already got quite a big studio developer with high sales, high demand for console things. And they've now got that as an exclusive. Starfield is being exclusive to Xbox and PC. It's not coming to PlayStation. Microsoft won't do that with Call of Duty because, like I said, if they can get the law changed, or even now, it would be 70-30 split. So they'd still, on every PlayStation, get 70% of all profits made, all in-app purchases, all things. Microsoft would get 70. So why would they take it off PlayStation? They'd get 70% of any money PlayStation would be getting.
That is true, because I'm pretty sure PlayStation still sells the most Call of Duties.
Yeah, it's a console. You buy a console for the exclusives, or you buy it because it's the one that your friends got. Now you're kind of getting crossplay. You don't have to, but even then, if Microsoft just decides to go, oh, we don't want crossplay between PlayStation, which they won't do. I'm not saying this is all just theoretical.
There's been a bunch of new games. It seems that Microsoft and Xbox are really into crossplay. It's more Sony that doesn't want it.
No, and I think, like I was saying, I think the reason Microsoft wants it is because they know that if they own the developer or the game and they put it on more consoles, they got more money.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Minecraft is the biggest game of all time, and they own that. You got to remember that Microsoft owns Minecraft. Yeah, it's crossplay, server hosting. People pay money to do that. Skins, I imagine, stuff like that. It's all like skins in Call of Duty. Think how much money Call of Duty makes just from skins alone, and stuff like that. This is me not talking Call of Duty racks up billions a year from skins and in-game content and stuff like that. I think, yeah, go on.
There is a chance that this might not go through. So because this Activision, these words are too similar.
Microsoft, yes.
Because this acquisition is so big, this has to be approved by multiple governments.
Yes, and the UK and Europe is currently deepening their investigation on it.
Yes, because you can actually find government documents related to the investigation already.
And you can see what the other because in the Brazilian documentation, Sony was very adamant about how bad this is, stating how big just Call of Duty alone has no competitor, basically. People can say Battlefield, but due to sheer sales numbers, and it sways console purchases, just by Sony's recollection of, if you get the exclusive content for Call of Duty, people will buy it for a PlayStation. Same with Microsoft, because Microsoft and Sony do switch when they get exclusives for Call of Duty. Sony's had a very long run, and currently PlayStation is still getting the exclusive beta for Modern Warfare 2 at time of thing. And Sony is very heavily marketing it as it's on PlayStation, but that's because they know it won't last forever. And I'll get to that point because Sony has stated how long their contract with Activision lasts, and it's only 3 more titles, I think.
Yes. So one government has already approved the acquisition, which is Saudi Arabia.
Of course.
Who would have thought? They probably don't even care. They were like, oh, yeah, sure, we don't really care.
No, there's a news story that we're going to cover in TFE this week, which is Saudi Arabia has invested a shit ton of money into gaming.
Oh, that makes sense.
I can't remember how much it is, but it's 37 billion into gaming.
Mad.
Yeah. So I wonder why they want to have like a little sway into the Microsoft side, because I'm sure Microsoft and Saudi Arabia have very nice ties. Mr. Bill Gates.
Yeah,
no, that's just speculation. That's not true. Like I'm trying to stay partial, because I honestly don't care if Call of Duty goes exclusive to Microsoft, because I don't play many Bethesda and Blizzard games at the moment. But I just find that it's a very bad feeling for business in my sense, because I studied business and I know bits and pieces about the business world, and I'm just like, this just doesn't sit very well with me. It's more of a business standpoint than a PlayStation fanboy standpoint.
But what might happen is the regulatory index or one of the governments may say they can acquire Activision, but they cannot acquire all of the assets.
Yeah, they'd have to sell off.
Didn't
some
that happen
of the
with Disney? They couldn't have ESPN.
No, yeah, they had to get rid of their news networks. They couldn't have Fox News because it would clash with ABC. You couldn't have two opposing viewpoint news networks. So they had to sell off all of Fox News. I think they kept ESPN because that was a football channel. But it's only in America anyway.
I thought ESPN was already theirs.
Yeah, maybe. I think they had to sell off whatever Fox
Sports or something.
Whatever Fox Sports sites were. Yeah, they had to sell off some stuff. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while since I didn't have that.
So what I'm saying, it may be the same thing. So because you make the point, the biggest one is Call of Duty. Probably the other assets would not be that big a deal.
I think they might have. I would imagine anything they'd have to sell off is maybe King. But then again, because the thing with video games is it's very difficult to regulate, because whilst technically you can state that Microsoft buying Activision wouldn't disrupt the market because there's so many other shooters and competitors and mobile games that it's like, oh yeah, they're not hindering the market. The issue with that is Activision owns pretty much all of the top dogs in terms of those categories. So first-person shooters, Call of Duty, they own Call of Duty. Mobile games, they own Candy Crush, makes a lot of money. Bethesda owns pretty much the RPG survival genre, like with Skyrim and Elden Ring and all of not Elden Ring, Elder Scrolls. They'd own a lot of competitive sports games, Overwatch, like competitive shooters, Overwatch. World of Warcraft is like the biggest MMO or MOBA or whatever. I can't remember what the fucking titles are. Massively online multiplayer arena.
No, that's not right.
What is it?
It's an MMO. You got a half.
Yeah,
right?
it does. It doesn't have. Doesn't have
online.
massive multiplayer.
It's not a MOBA. It's an MMO.
Yeah, I know, but I can't remember which ones. But yeah,
Apparently it's Destiny. That's also classed as an MMO.
Yeah, that one's weird to me. Oh, I also wanted to point out how much King alone makes. So this is from 2017 to 2022, just in quarters. So quarter 3 from 2017, 528 million. Quarter 4, 516 million. Quarter 2018, quarter 1, 534, 52, 502, 506, 543, 529, 499, 500, 503, 498, 553, 530. And then this year alone, all quarters, they made over 600 million. So just from King alone, if they waited a couple years, they'd make a crap ton of money back on that 87 billion acquisition.
Yeah, but I don't think them owning King would be any issue of concern for Monopoly, because they don't own right? They don't own any mobile development, Microsoft, in terms of apps. I mean, they've got Office and that, but ignore that. That's something completely different. In terms of actual gaming
But
mobile.
I think it's because I think the only reason it would be an issue is because it's pretty much one of the biggest, and just to suddenly have the biggest one go to one of the biggest companies in the world. Because Microsoft, everyone forgets this. Microsoft is $1 trillion company and Sony is $1 billion company, but only like 100 and something billion. I can't remember what the stock value is. I'll find that. But Microsoft is valued quite substantially higher. So where is it? Okay. Microsoft Corp is currently at market cap of 1.77 trillion, and Sony's market cap is currently at 1.24 billion.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difference.
Yeah. Why Microsoft can even afford to have a Game Pass is because Microsoft can just afford to throw so much money at it just to get the stake. And that's why Google Stadia has kind of stumbled and failed and now is being shut off and discontinued, is because Google, despite being one of the richest companies in the world, didn't throw as much money and didn't go around acquiring all of the studios like Microsoft is doing. And
yeah, that's true.
Didn't have exclusives, didn't do this correct subscription model like Microsoft, where you just have the games and then you pay for them. You had to buy the games on Google, and it was just like, why?
Yeah, you just paid more money. You're like, well, why am I paying more money for this?
Yeah, I get some free games, but if I want to play an actual game, I have to pay money. So Google just kind of went, we'll do it. We'll use the technology and we'll push it and we'll try and do it. But everyone knew it was going to fail because Google has a habit of just shutting down projects after a couple of years if they don't get the traction, even if they don't put any stuff. Whereas Microsoft knows that, hey, look, if we just dump all of our money into this, eventually we'll have the biggest market share and the biggest competitive platform, and we can then keep those people, and then every time they make a purchase, it comes back to us. That's why they're doing it. Because if you can get people to switch platforms, then you make the money whenever people make... This was a thing that was keeping Sony from letting crossplay happen. Because Sony was worried that if people switched to purchasing it on mobile or on the Epic Game Store or on the Microsoft Store for the skins, they would be losing the money if people weren't buying it. Because it would just be like, oh, well, you can just buy it on the Epic thing and get 30% off. Or you could buy it on Microsoft and Microsoft will get the money. Whereas if you bought the skin on PlayStation, you'd get the skin. So I think in the end, it was kind of scummy, but PlayStation did have to strike a deal with Epic so that they got a percentage of all purchases on other sales. Which, yeah, kind of scummy, but like it does make sense from a standpoint of if you lose that competitiveness of people buying it on your thing, and like you got to remember Microsoft can afford to lose money, Sony can't, which is why Microsoft like could at some stage, if they wanted to, have just bought Sony. They would never have been allowed.
That's true,
but they could have.
Isn't there still rumors of Apple trying to buy Sony?
There was rumors of Sony being bought by Apple. I still think Google should have bought Sony. Like, I don't want any of these companies to buy Sony or anything else because it just limits the amount of like competitiveness, because it's just one mega corporation owning everything and another mega corporation owning everything, and that's not what you want. You kind of want, because the reason why cinema's kind of dying is because, hey, look, Warner Brothers owns every single franchise under the sun, like Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, the DCU. And then if one guy comes in and goes, nah, I don't like any of that, cancels everything, they go, can't do anything. If Disney decides that they don't want to bring back a franchise that you love, you can't do anything. They own the rights. Like, it's not great, because also, if you also hinder your own release schedule, because Marvel's running into this problem of when do we put our movies out so that they don't cut into the profits of our other movies, because we own so many different movies now. So you then get a limited choice because, hey, look, if we release, say, a Call of Duty, an Overwatch, a new Diablo game, a new StarCraft, all in the same year, we're diluting our resources. So people will go, well, I'm only going to buy one game because we're in a recession.
Yeah, that's true. And we could.
Yeah. And so, look, there was just like kind of just like a pointing out of things.
I mean, yeah, you got to love the fact we're in a recession right now, especially when the pound's equal to $1.
Yeah. And even in America, they're going into recession and stuff like that. And one of the reasons Google states is why they're shutting down Stadia is because it's cost cutting. Like, they're trying to save money from this recession that they're in, and they're cutting dead weight. Like, why pump?
Do you know what's
I think that's an excuse.
Do you know what's mad? It's now cheaper to buy things in the UK than it is the US.
Mm-hmm.
That's mental to me.
Yeah. And we're going through bad times, but yeah, like, America's just had a hurricane rip through Florida. So.
I know someone who was there. They went on holiday there during the hurricane. They're alive. It's fine.
But yeah, another thing that was stated during the Epic versus Apple lawsuit is Microsoft apparently has never turned a profit on hardware. So they have never made money off of their hardware. They've only made money through their online purchases, which again is normal because hardware is used to sell software, which is then used to get the purchases. But Sony has turned profit on its consoles because it sells a lot more, because it had the competitive edge in terms of we're here for the Call of Duties, we're here for the exclusives, we're here. Microsoft's always kind of stumbled in that aspect for the Xbox One generation at least, where it tried to be a home entertainment system, and then no one wanted that. They wanted it for gaming, and that's what they kind of stumbled. They didn't have many exclusives. And now Microsoft's full dive is basically, we got to buy developers and get the prestige that Sony has without any of the effort. Like, Sony kind of handpicked these and kind of gave them the resources to grow and build it up. And all of these other studios that Microsoft is did it all, but Microsoft's just kind of coming in and going, yeah, we own that now. We get all that prestige. We get all of that luxury. We get all of these titles and things without any of the effort. Which, fair enough. They can do that. It pays the developers. If it gets games out, then great. But it is kind of scummy that Microsoft's just basically going, yeah, we did all this.
Do you think Sony should retaliate more and try to buy someone else?
The issue with that is Sony can't afford to do that.
There's a few they can afford.
They can afford it, but it is cutting a lot into their revenue.
Yeah, so people throwing around Ubisoft quite a bit.
Ubisoft, EA, if Sony really wanted to push it, because EA has dropped in value because of a lot of controversies recently. But even then, it would be kind of competitive. Also, I think if the Microsoft one goes through, it would be harder for Sony to buy EA, because then it would be a lot more anti-competitive. Because you would then have both, because you'd be trying to pass like another massive transaction of a studio, whilst another one's just gone through and they've gone, yeah, it's a bit dodgy and we can't really allow anything else after that. So I think that's why Microsoft wants to get this pushed quickly, because again, if you take the big one and then any other a company trying to buy it goes, well, we got to go scrutiny because you wanna have anti-competitive trades, whereas it's like, well, you've just bought the biggest company that was on the table.
That's true.
And we're just now trying to compete against it. Like, it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, if Sony buys EA, it's going to be heavily scrutinized and heavily reviewed to see if it actually comes. And it might even turn out that, yeah, it's anti-consumer. It's competitive. And that's just because, but Microsoft's one would have got approved. Is why I'm kind of like, I don't like that. Because it means any like big purchase afterwards kind of is going to have higher levels of scrutiny against it, and it will make it harder for even Sony to be like, hey, look, we were going to do this, but Microsoft got the biggest one, and now we need something to like bolster us, and we can't do that because Microsoft bought the biggest one, which I imagine might happen. Right, this is all speculation at this point, but
yeah, I can't see us helping the market too well. The thing is, a lot of these changes won't happen for many years.
No, like, Sony can renegotiate, but I think the reason why Sony is very against it is because they'd have to go to Microsoft their biggest competitor, and agreed terms and conditions for Call of Duty and any other Activision game, and it would be, well, if you don't agree with us, Sony, you don't get it. And so Sony would have to agree to basically whatever Microsoft wants in order to get the game, or they lose out on a massive amount of revenue that they would normally be getting without that issue. And I still believe if Microsoft is trying to push that lower percentage for hosting and like whatnot, then yeah, it's bad for Sony. And I don't see a lot of people talking about that, because like it's always the exclusivity and Microsoft not stopping it from being on the platform. Microsoft's whole thing is they don't care that it's on the platform because they get the money. Like, people forget that they would get that 70% split no matter what, but Microsoft is kind of trying to push that lower split so that they would get more money regardless. Also, when you do massive mergers, you get a lot of people fired and a lot of jobs laid off, because you don't need that many people to do the same job as other companies.
Well, it happened with that. That probably should happen at Activision with most of their HR department.
Yes, yeah. But you would have a lot of Microsoft employees taking over and not a lot of the Activision people staying, which is probably good, but it's also, you could just do that regardless of without Microsoft involvement. You don't necessarily need Microsoft to be there for that. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the Sony Bungie acquisition, and I didn't realize that's gone through.
Yeah, that got approved. That was like 6.9 billion.
I think it's 2.6 billion.
2.6. Oh yeah, it was quite low.
Yeah, it didn't have the same.
Well, yeah, it's one company and one sort of brand, because they don't own Halo.
Yeah, it's really just one game.
Yeah, well, two games, because they have another game in development.
Yeah, they do.
Which is supposedly not a Destiny game.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's just a single person game.
Yeah. Well, it got investment from a third party for like $100 million to develop it.
Does Microsoft own a film division yet?
I don't think so.
Because I was wondering what they're going to do with sort of the rights to the games and that aspect.
I imagine they have a partnership with Paramount, because that's how the Halo TV series came out.
Right, so they may do something with Call of Duty.
Yeah, I think they've been trying to get a Call of Duty film for years, and I think The Rock's attached at the moment to a Call of Duty film.
He's always in there. He's in every franchise.
Yeah.
I'm surprised not a Marvel yet.
I don't think I don't want him in. I don't want that.
We all know how much you love The Rock.
Fuck's sake! Why can I not get? Google keeps auto-correcting, and it keeps knocking out the thing I want to.
Mind you, Sony is actually doing quite well on the other exclusive games, because the PlayStation ports are doing fantastic.
Well on PC.
Yeah.
But I think the only reason Sony's even started doing that is because they have to move the needle to other areas so that they can still stay competitive with Microsoft. Because they need that cash injection from, hey, look, we've got exclusives. Well, they're not selling on PlayStation because people have got the PlayStation. We've branched out to as big a market as we can. We need to sell them on on PC so that we can get some cash injection so that we can even afford to keep the lights on, I guess. Does Microsoft own TV? Microsoft Entertainment Studios was a short-lived American television and movie studio based in Santa Monica, California, created internally by Microsoft Studios in 2012 in order to create interactive television content for Xbox Live. So they do technically own something, but they don't actually own like a studio or anything.
It's probably more like you suggest, that they have a partnership with someone else.
Yeah.
But going back to Sony acquisitions, I think the biggest rumor is Square Enix next.
Yeah. Which is a shame, which could. They have a very good... It was either that or From Software, or Konami. Those, I think, are the three biggest ones, because Sony has very good relationships with those studios. From Software has Bloodborne and who has all the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring and all of that. And they get like good development. Square Enix because it's Japanese and Sony loves the Japanese stuff.
But does Square Enix actually own Tomb Raider?
No, they sold that off, remember?
Oh, that did happen.
Yeah, they sold off all their American division because they weren't selling well because they were trying to make them play like Japanese games and have loads of microtransactions and stuff like that. And they weren't bringing in insane revenue like all those other games. But they were good games. Like all the Tomb Raider games were good. And the Deus Ex and stuff like that. And then Konami because Silent Hill and all of that. And Sony had PT, which was an exclusive like short for the next Silent Hill. And then also if Sony bought Konami, my hope is that they try and get a Yu-Gi-Oh! VR game developed. Because
you're such a fanboy.
I love... Just imagine how sick it would be to have like an actual VR simulation of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like having the dragon behind you, having Blue Eyes White Dragon behind you as it attacks someone else. Or like Dark Magician just popping up on the field, putting the cards down on your wrist and then it popping up on the field. It'd be sick. Like, there are people working on those, like, fan-made games. But, like, they look kind of terrible. But they look fun. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the perfect game for VR. Like, I'm sorry. It would just work. But yeah, I think that's everything I have to say on this. Hopefully people found this interesting and have a little bit more knowledge on sort of the inner workings that I, like, might be happening. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and we started our podcast because of the Bethesda acquisition by Microsoft.
That's not what started it, was it?
Yeah, that was our first like news thing because it like literally happened like, and then there was a lost episode. Dan, that was the first episode that we did.
Was it the lost one?
Yeah, it was the lost one. That was the first episode.
Oh, mad.
Yeah, that was the lost episode, which we then re-uploaded because I kind of fixed the audio, kind of didn't. Kind of just went, hey, look, we're taking a week off. We need content. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this. And this is a bit different, but like, it needed to be said. This is kind of just like, here's some actual kind of like, hopefully non-biased opinion on this acquisition. And if we've stated anything wrong, let us know because I'm happy to have this discussion. I like talking about this.
I mean, I know you have. I've pretty much been on my phone the entire time. I can't even lie. I just left you to it. You know what you're talking about. You don't need me. Yeah, you're just there to interject every now and again with some nice little. Here's some stuff that I found whilst I was doing this. Well, yeah, that's what I was just googling. I just see what I can find. Yeah. But anyway, we'll see you next time. Goodbye. Dad, say goodbye. He didn't say goodbye, everyone. He stopped recording. I'll say it for him. Goodbye. See, that was a spot on Dan impression. Anyway, goodbye.